Hello. Well, I'm going to talk about the police killing of an innocent man they had arrested and who was not causing them much trouble. The man in question was called Tony Timpa. And the evidence for what the police did was on a body camera that the police themselves, one of the, or several of the police, were wearing. Disturbing police body camera footage released Wednesday shows a man being restrained by Dallas officers before his death and yelling, "You're gonna kill me." The footage showing the August 2016 death of Tony Timpa in Dallas shows an officer pinning him to the ground with his hands cuffed behind him for nearly 14 minutes as the 32-year-old eventually becomes unresponsive. Officers are heard joking that Timpa had fallen asleep, with one yelling, "5 more minutes, Mum." Timpa's death in the parking lot of an adult video store came after he called 911 saying he was off his medication for schizophrenia and depression and needed help. He was expecting someone to help him. That's why he called, Timpa's mother, Vicky, told CBS Dallas in 2018. After the family had reviewed the body camera footage, but before it was made public. He wasn't expecting several police to kill him. A medical examiner ruled Timpa's death a homicide and listed the cause as sudden cardiac death caused by the toxic effects of cocaine and physiological stress associated with physical restraint. Now, what happened was these men piled in on him, but as he became unresponsive, they were joking about him. Timpa was unarmed and had already been handcuffed by a private security guard before officers arrived. As Timpa becomes unresponsive, an officer says he appears to be out cold, and they laugh and joke about him being asleep, saying, "It's time for school, wake up." So they have an idea that he's a young man, that he's a kid. Another says, "I don't want to go to school, 5 more minutes, Mum." Oh, they're having such a lot of fun. But it's obvious that he was dead. One of the officers asked, "He didn't just die down there, did he? Hope I didn't kill him." And then paramedics told the officers that Timpa was indeed dead. That's just bad policing. And of course, after this man died, there were candlelight vigils, which turned into riots. Shops in Dallas were trashed. Cars were set on fire. There was general mayhem, and the country practically shut down because of that. Only joking. This is the first I've heard of it because I was doing some research. Nobody cared about the cruel and absolutely 100% heartless treatment of Mr. Timpa. George Floyd was a very large man, and you can imagine that the police went into that with a very, with the attitude that this man might be trouble. By the way, I mean, it was. They did kill him. I've had a couple of comments under other videos in which, the previous video, in which Somebody said he couldn't have been unable to breathe if he could say, "I can't breathe." That is a load of nonsense, I'm sorry. Of course you can, because if people are sitting on you, in order to say something, you're exhaling. You may be able to gasp out, "I can't breathe." But the problem is you can't take in another breath because you've got too much weight on your back. I think there were maybe 3 or 4 people on his back, as well as that guy with his knee in his neck. So yes, he could say, "I can't breathe." The police did act badly, but there is no question that they were joking about it. They completely lost their cool. And maybe they got sort of carried away by the power of it. But in this case, they're actually making a joke out of the fact that they were, whether they knew at that very moment that they were killing him or not, they had a pretty good idea that what they were doing could kill him. And he was already handcuffed. So this is really bad policing. Riots, outraged howls from people in Trafalgar Square, British policemen kneeling down in sympathy. What the hell is that all about? Tony Timpa, why aren't you doing that for him? Well, I think we all know why, don't we? Let's just have a look at another case. There was a woman called Justine Damond. What happened was that Damond heard some screaming or altercation, and she called 911 very late at night, and not getting much response, she rang again and reported that she thought she heard a woman either having sex or being raped. So she was being a public-spirited citizen. Dispatchers categorised the call as unknown trouble, female screaming. Yeah, I mean, it could have been anything. A relatively low priority. Officers responded to the area at it was a low crime neighbourhood in southern Minneapolis again, and found no suspects or signs of the suspected rape that had prompted Damond's telephone call to 911. So these 2 officers were in the car, a chap called Mohammed Noor and, let's see, what was that chap's first name? Yes, Matthew Hannity. Matthew Hannity was driving. And what happened then, they were going to leave when Damond approached the police car's driver's side window. And obviously she was going to tell the police something about the sound she'd heard. Now, it says here, Hannity, it says here, would indicate that he was startled by a loud sound near the squad. Now, would indicate sounds a bit, apparently he didn't say he would indicate somehow. Well, he was telling a lie. Because Justine Damond was in her pyjamas and she was barefoot and she had nothing in her hands. So she didn't make a loud sound. She approached the window and Noor just leaned ahead of his companion, pointed the gun. Oh, I'm sorry, this is an American car. Leaned ahead, pointed the gun and shot Justine Damond point blank. No warning, no hands up, back off, nothing. Just leaned and shot her through the window and she was dead within seconds. It turns out that Noor had form. He'd apparently pulled a gun on a driver that he'd stopped for a minor traffic violation, and he had 3 complaints against him for violence or violent behaviour. Ultimately, he was convicted of third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter, and sentenced to 12.5 years in jail, which, frankly, I don't think was enough. So, point-blank murder. The Australian government, because Justine Damond was an Australian citizen, the Australian government was a bit miffed, and they made a bit of a fuss. There were candlelit vigils, there were protest marches about this killing of a white woman by a black man. The riots turned nasty, windows were smashed, houses and cars were set on fire, people were killed, police kneeled in Trafalgar Square. Only joking. Tumbleweed. And then there was this. This man here, a retired police officer, there was some looting going on, and he was shot dead. There's a very harrowing video on YouTube where he's lying on the ground and somebody's calling to him, but getting no response, of course. And I'm not going to play that. Instead, you can look at the face of this nice man. But that was a looter who shot him. So we're assuming, I suppose, that the looter was black, because most of them seem to be black in all the videos I've seen. And there was a candlelit vigil, a protest march which turned nasty, windows were smashed, cars were burnt, police in Trafalgar Square knelt in sympathy. Not. This man just smiles out of eternity. And that's the only memory we're going to have of him. We're not going to have any riots in his memory. And when people say they dishonour, the riots dishonour the memory of George Floyd, no, they don't. George Floyd was unlawfully killed. But he wasn't a saint. He was supposed to be trying to get his life together, but the fact is, he was in that situation because he was passing a counterfeit bill. Anyway, yeah, these are the cases I promised to talk about in the video I made about the piano. Maybe we should remember that what's going on here has nothing to do with Mr. Floyd. It's politics. It's to do with overthrowing. It's to do with making the West unsure of itself. Now, they think that they're winning something there. Of course, those of us who are thinking a bit further ahead know they're not winning anything. They might succeed in destroying the West. I don't think they're going to like what they find at the other side of it, though. But that's for another discussion. But it is political, that's for sure. And it's all about undermining our confidence in ourselves. And I think maybe I made another video where, prior to this, I just recorded Ozymandias by Shelley, which I think I'll probably upload before I upload this one. And if you haven't seen it, please go back and look at it. It's quite a short poem. The thing about it is that when I see how people disrespect Western civilization, I go back to looking at what Western civilization has done. And I think that's one of the reasons why I went back to Ozymandias. because it's a brilliant poem. It's a poem about the end of a great empire, and so it has a double meaning for me. But we should not be out of confidence with our civilization. The sort of person that David Dorn was, he's a good American, not an African American, a good American. And it's him that you should be celebrating and remembering and not rioting about. If you want to donate or contact, the information will be rolling over the Graniopteryx as I speak. Please like, subscribe and share because it does help with the algorithm. If you visit my channel on YouTube and one day discover that I've disappeared without warning, you'll still find me on Bitchute or Minds. Just go to either of those platforms and do a search for Graniopteryx. If you're already watching this on Bitchute or Minds, good for you. Meanwhile, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you must keep checking the subscribe and bell icons because occasionally they reset. Till next time.